Welcome to the We Win Injury Law podcast. I'm Tyler Todd, your host, sitting here with my, why can't I think co-host?
I don't know.
Maybe it's got to stay in. It's got to stay in. My co-host, Jaron, the Snow Canyon Man Sandberg. And before we get going into our show today, you guys, I want to just recognize our awesome little cups. The We Win Injury Law Show cups. How rad are these?
Pretty awesome.
Right? You kind of know you feel like you're podcasting for real when you have like your own
Podcast cup
for the show.
I agree.
These are awesome. You guys, we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff today. I think if you're on TikTok and you're watching anything on YouTube or anything on social media, unless you're under a rock, you have been watching and you're probably familiar with the Karen Read trial. And that's what we're diving into today. The Karen Read trial and what's going on. If you haven't been watching, then we're going to kind of talk about that, what it is, where they're at, and then where they're going, and hopefully give a little bit of a legal analysis on what I think is happening, I think what most of you think is happening, and then how that relates to even injury law. Because there are some correlations into what I'm seeing happening in this trial to what happens in the everyday injury case. So let's just dive right in. What do you know about it?
So we talked about this a little bit, maybe at the tail end of one of our other podcasts, but I can't remember if this was just in our planning meeting about today's podcast. But I had confused two different, there were popular trials going on right now, and one of them that I figured out was not the same trial. They actually look very similar.
And not the Diddy trial.
Not the Diddy trial. Right. Not the Diddy trial. So yeah, I've kind of deep dive getting familiar with this one. So now anytime you get a second bite at the apple, that's a cool, because I'll tell you what, if O.J. Simpson would have been a hung trial,
well, there's no way.
The prosecution wouldn't have screwed it up a second time. They wouldn't have had the glove, and
right. And there was no way O.J. was going to get a second trial or a hung jury.
Yeah. But do you think this, at least with this case, do you feel like it favors the prosecution more or the defense to get a second trial?
1,000%, I think, favors the prosecution. I mean, it just gives them another opportunity to get a conviction, right? Yeah. And they couldn't get a conviction the first time. So, of course, it favors the prosecution.
Yeah.
The defense is probably like, how are we here? Not only with the evidence that they have, but then also with what happened in the first trial. They're saying to themselves, how are we here?
Well, and all of your best moments of the first trial for the defense, ooh, that one hit well. You don't get a chance at any of those. You have to come up with all new strategies. It just blows my mind if you'd have to defend at trial a second time.
You probably, to some degree, you learn what may have worked, and then how for the prosecution, and then how to rebut it in the second, and then vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Or how to present it to the jury a little bit better, which is okay. But this case is wild. I honestly, I've been watching it. I've been looking at. There's so many variable factors, and this is a lot of people ask us on Suits, right? And I guess Suits, LA Suits, just bombed, so they're not renewing for a second. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear that, but I suspected that was going to be the case.
Harvey, I guess, has some minor role in the show, but there's no Harvey Specter in LA Suits.
Yeah.
And without Harvey, you don't have Suits.
Because
let's be honest.
I almost thought you could have maybe replaced the Mike Ross character.
I think he's replaceable.
But
Harvey's
can't
not.
Replace Harvey.
No, you can't replace Harvey. And you maybe don't replace Meghan Markle, who's a princess now, so that's a bomb.
Yeah.
So we can't
ex-princess now at this point.
Or ex, yeah.
Ex-princess.
You can't replace the princess, and you can't replace Harvey.
Yeah.
Without Harvey, there's no Suits. But I bring that up because I don't ever watch Suits, or really I don't really watch legal shows because most of them aren't really real. They're not, at least, relatable. So I watch legal shows or movies, and I'm like, that's so unrealistic. That would never happen.
And that's kind of even the Judge Judy that's very popular,
For
right?
sure. That would never happen. That's not real life. But honestly, what's happening in the Karen Read trial, you would never think is happening in real life, but it's happening in real life.
Raw, real trial TV.
A crazy judge who rolls her eyes probably more than winking. It's wild. And then you're and I keep watching all these clips of her rolling her eyes and whatnot, and the way that she's handling the attorneys, and I'm thinking to myself, where does she have to go? What does she have? Sorry, we're gonna end testimony now. What is she? Is there something better she has to do?
Well, and do you know if is this a jurisdiction where this judge was elected? I don't know if I can't remember because this is it Boston? I can't remember.
It's Boston. Well, it's Canton, which is outside of Boston. So that's a great question whether she's elected or not. But you got the crazy judge, and you have the lawyers, and you have the second trial. You have and I think
they're an appointed one. So a judge, they're appointed. So it's not like she's like doing this for re-election purposes.
No, I think if it was re-election purposes, she would not be acting the way she is. I think it's
you think it's the opposite.
I should have deductively thinking. I should have been like, oh, it's obviously appointment because there's no way she's acting like this, being appointed.
That makes sense.
So, and then all the different witnesses. So synopsis, right? If you guys don't know anything about the Karen Reed trial, we have, and Karen Reed's the defendant. This is a criminal trial, which is unlike what we do in civil law. With injury cases, everything we do is civil law, and those are civil trials. So, our burden is different. A lot of people don't realize this. When we talk about injury cases, our burden in civil trials is a preponderance of the evidence, or more likely than not, right, to have occurred, meaning crash or slip and fall or negligence, i.e., and then you have injury, so more likely than not having caused those injuries. In a criminal trial, the burden is beyond a reasonable doubt. So when we talked about OJ earlier, it's beyond a reasonable doubt that OJ killed his wife.
Yeah, any reasonable doubt gets him off.
And so then that was why the whole if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit theory worked, because that was the reasonable doubt that allegedly convinced and persuaded the jury, who might have already been persuaded regardless.
Well, and how long that trial went. I mean, even in our trial, our most recent one that was a 5-day trial, there was moments where, remember, we saw one of the jurors look like he was asleep.
In these cases, these criminal cases so on the Karen Reed that we're talking about, we're on day 19.
I mean, this is
day 19 today.
I mean, you think of for some of these, and some of the testimony was really interesting, but some of it is like the forensic evidence.
And to be fair to what we were talking about earlier with suits and how it's unrealistic and whatnot, what you don't see, like, for example, I think today or yesterday, there was only one witness.
Yeah.
So they did one witness with direct and cross-examination, they were done. Because a lot of times what people don't also understand about trials is it's a matter of scheduling witnesses.
Yeah.
So if you can't get people to show up, or there's a conflict, then you might have a day where there's nothing that happens. In fact, one of the days was canceled last week. So trials are long because it's about scheduling witnesses and when your experts can show up and when they can be there, and then the timing of it.
Well, and kind of the trial within the trial too, because sometimes some of these days the jury's not even out; they're just waiting back in the jury room because they're arguing over some motion. Hey, now we're here. The evidence shouldn't be introduced because they haven't met a burden or something like that.
Sidebars are having. Yeah. So if you guys have been watching on TikTok and social media, there are a number of sidebars. Like, what are they calling her? Auntie Bev? That's the judge. So Auntie Bev is calling all these sidebars, and like right now there's an allegation that she has like hand signals with the prosecution. There's a number of issues that are just wild about this trial, and it's just kind of a fascinating thing to talk about, to be honest. So synopsis, okay? So John O'Keefe, Boston police officer, is out with his girlfriend, Karen Reed, the defendant in the trial, and they're out at the bar one night, okay? Then they run into some friends at the bar, and they get invited to like an after party, which I find interesting, and I don't know why I do, but I find it interesting that we're talking about Boston police officers who are out of the bar drinking, and I think they're drinking pretty heavily. In fact,
that's the allegations at least, right?
Yeah, in fact, and then there's evidence or video footage that showed John O'Keefe, Boston police officer, leaving the bar with a cocktail in his hand, okay? Then they get invited to an after party where there's more drinking at another police officer's home. So
this is quite the week. I can't remember what day of the week it is, but weekday. This is a good time.
So January 29th, is it 2022?
Allegations, early hours of the 29th, right?
Yeah. So January, that's on our phones. We should find that pretty quickly. January 29th, 2022. What day is that? If it's like a Tuesday night, I'm going to be even more like shocked.
I know, right?
Like, let's go party on Tuesday.
It is the weekend.
Okay, it's a weekend. All right, fair enough. So the weekend, whatever. Maybe
so Friday night to Saturday morning.
Friday night, so they're off.
They're having a good time.
They're having a good time. Fair enough. But regardless, okay. So he leaves the bar with a cocktail, gets invited to another police officer's home for an after party, and the theory is that Karen Reed drops him off at the party, and then so here the prosecution theory is that they get in a fight. She drops him off, and then either goes, when she's dropping him off, they get in another maybe argument or fight, and then runs him over with her car, and leaves him for dead. Okay.
But then he freezes to death and dies.
Freezes to death and hypothermia, right.
Yep.
And then the defense's theory is that she drops him off, he goes in, gets in an altercation, and then there's an attack, and then they like leave him out front and make it look like he was run over. But it's a massive cover-up. That's the defense's theory. That's Karen Reed's theory of why she's not guilty. And so there's a number of pieces of evidence that just don't work. I think for the prosecution, I'm gonna tip my hand where I stand. I think she's innocent. What do you know about it? And before we could dive into it,
either she's innocent or like an innocent accident, right? She could have hit him, but not on purpose. Is the general way I'm leaning.
Yeah,
because I do want to give that possibility because there is some evidence with the vehicle that I thought, well, if she just accidentally hit him but didn't see him, and it's in the snow and things are quiet, and
so that goes to the grand jury indictment where one of the witnesses who was at the party, who happens to be here I guess let's talk about the relevant players.
Yeah,
we've got John O'Keefe, who's the decedent, the guy who died, girlfriend, defendant Karen Reed. The after party was at Brian Albert's home, fellow officer. Okay, police officer.
Fellow police officer.
And then you've got Jennifer McCabe, who is Brian Albert's sister-in-law. Now, I haven't seen anything about her husband being there, and I don't know, to be fair, before, I guess I should have looked into that. I don't know if it's like Brian Albert's brother's wife, or if it's, what's another way, sister-in-law?
If it's his siblings.
Or could, yeah, right. I don't know.
His sibling's spouse.
Okay. I don't know. But anyways, she's there. And then she testifies to the grand jury that Karen Reed had said, I hit him.
Yeah.
Now, the defense was trying to make it sound like she said it, or she doesn't know how many times she said it.
Yeah.
And that I hit him twice, first 3 times was a big deal. I didn't really find that relevant or super relevant, in my opinion. But
well, and this is where that statement gets so hard, right? Is like, again, not having heard it when it was in the grand jury, but it does make you think, like, was that like, oh, I could have hit him. Oh, I hit him because she doesn't know he's dead. He died of hypothermia.
Right. So McCabe is a prosecution witness. So just we're talking about the party. So then you got Proctor, who's the lead investigator. Then you've got another officer, and then you got the forensic analysis, and then you've got the experts, and we'll talk about the experts as well.
Yeah.
So, anyways, first trial, like we said, not acquitted. It was a hung jury.
Yeah. Which doesn't mean that all of them agreed. It just means that they couldn't agree on some of them wanted to acquit, some of them still wanted to convict, versus an acquittal would have been all of them saying she didn't do it. Conviction would have been the other way.
And allegedly, apparently, they polled the jury, and there was a majority that wanted to acquit.
Yeah.
And they're trying to argue that there could have been a double jeopardy argument, the defense for Karen Reed.
Yeah.
But without the acquittal,
if you don't have every single, I don't think it's a majority. You still have to have every single one of them. And if you have one juror that was a holdout, it's a hung jury.
Hung jury. So that argument wouldn't work.
And most of the time, my understanding is when prosecutions see that, all but one, sometimes they've leaned towards, now we're not going to do this again.
And why retry it?
Yeah, why retry it when most of them...
And as you say that, my thought process, like right now, is they had to do that because of the cover-up.
Yeah. Or at least it really lends itself to the cover-up.
Because why else would they do it? So they have an open case?
Because they're embarrassed.
Or they're embarrassed. But it just leads to the defense's theory of cover-up, because they have to then validate the super ridiculous, either super ridiculous and horrible police work, or they have to have a conviction, right, to kind of get them off the hook for the cover up. So that's where because a
conviction then says, no, the jury doesn't believe your made up story of a cover up. This was great police work,
right?
And where acquittal or a hung jury leans itself into, they believed it.
Albert, whose home the after party was at, and where John O'Keefe died, This is where it gets really weird because they have a German Shepherd. So if you know anything about the case, we're going to talk with us. It's going to be crazy. There's a lot going on in this trial. But the injuries John O'Keefe suffered, okay, head trauma to the head, i.e. this is their theory of the car hitting him in the head. Yep. And then he had, if you saw his arm, he had like all kinds of like lacerations on his arm.
Yeah.
And what appeared to be dog bites. And I think the prosecution's trying to say like, oh, that was from the car, but he didn't have any other injuries on his body at all. His arm and his head trauma. So the home was at Albert's, okay? And the home apparently had been in his family for years. He had a German Shepherd at home at the time. They get rid of the dog. They sell the family home, and they get rid of all their cell phones. And there were allegedly 2 phone calls from Albert and Higgins. So Higgins is another player in this, another police officer. And apparently Higgins had some flirtatious texting between Karen Reed and himself. And then Proctor, who is the lead investigator, but also like, you know, in that little friend group, comes and does the investigation. No search warrant, no like really forensic analysis of the home. Evidence is captured with like baggies and like red Solo cups, and within like 24 hours they have a suspect in Karen Reed.
Yeah, and what even is funnier is like as more and more has come out, because this officer is now on leave and has done public apologies, but as more and more comes out, it was like, well, I just wanted to find out for myself. Like,
well, you're talking about after the first trial.
Yeah.
So after the hung jury, he was let go. Proctor was let go. But then one of the other lead detectives was also saying that in his review of Proctor, post-investigation of Karen Reed, that his investigation was with honor, integrity, and like the highest outstanding police work,
the highest standards
that he could have been given, which is crazy because then as the evidence came out and he didn't want to read it at trial, he was talking about like looking through Karen Reed's phone and looking for nudes and saying like he didn't find any nudes.
Like he was disappointed.
Like, it's just everything that's adding up with this whole investigation is crazy. And how Auntie Bev is letting this go on. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I almost want to, look, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer, but I feel like they should move for a directed verdict, like right now, with their burden being beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Anyone watching, and that jury, everyone is saying there's a reasonable doubt that she did it. I mean, I don't think anyone's saying like they know 100% that she didn't do it, because I guess there is that possibility.
Like I said, that was it. Again, after reviewing everything, I still want to just leave open the possibility that she could have accidentally hit him with the vehicle. I mean, I think that is still out there.
So this is the timeline.
Yeah.
So she drops him off around 12:30 a.m. And then there's evidence that from the black box data of the car that she goes home. Then the last time his cell phone is on lock is around that same time. So she goes home, and there's evidence that she goes into the garage, and then when she wakes up around 4 o'clock in the morning on his couch, she realizes he's not there. Then there's evidence of 44 calls to his cell phone, kind of frantically, accusatory, maybe mad, like, where are you?
Yeah.
You know, are you cheating on me? What are you doing? Who are you with?
Yeah.
Maybe, right? Which is normal. I can appreciate that.
If my wife wasn't home by 4 a.m., I'd have a lot
and after you've been at the bar, and then you get dropped off at a party, and maybe she went in for a hot minute. Maybe there's some, hey, what was he doing?
Yeah.
Possibly, right? So then she goes...
Well, but 44 phone calls also... Like, again, if I'm going back to, like, if she murdered him, and now she's trying to cover it up, you wouldn't do 44. You do a couple of phone calls. Hey, where are you? A text message. 44 times seems like
I'm worried.
I'm really worried. Like what someone legitimately be worried would send 44.
Right. But how you get rid of your dogs or dog, sell the house, get rid of all the evidence. Oh, so apparently, so frantically, right? Which I think 44 calls, just to your point, is frantic.
Yeah, I agree.
So then there's evidence that and there's video footage of her backing the car into, I think, another car at the O'Keefe home where she was, to like go back over to the Albert home to find him and look for him. So, but what the prosecution has, or what the part of their evidence is that they have taillights that were found in front of the Albert home where they found O'Keefe, but that wasn't, none of those taillight evidence was found initially.
Yeah.
It was only found later in the day.
Well, and even during the, I think the line of questioning that I viewed, and I can't remember if this is from, my guess is this is the new trial because it's more recent, but it was like, well, didn't you do a thorough investigation? Are you supposed to be like the...
And we're not talking about lay people. We're talking about police officers.
Yeah, like, how did you miss this if it really was there the whole time?
That's why it screams cover up.
Yep.
There's just no way. Again, if we were talking about people that had no history or not history training in criminal law or investigative processes or anything, maybe you understand. I mean, maybe you buy it. But even with lay people, you're not going to buy that everyone's out there looking for him or they see him and they're looking for how he died or what happened. They're not going to see red taillights. I'm sure they either have flashlights or we all have flashlights on our phones. So a taillight, what it's supposed to do, what does it do? When light's on it or through it.
Yeah.
It lights up. Like, you're going to see it. Because if you saw it later, how would you not see it in the dark with flashlights? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So they have that. Then they have DNA on the bumper and on the taillight of her car and hair samples, which the car was seized later that day.
Yeah.
Or in 2 days.
Might have been the next day.
So I would imagine in closing, the defense is going to be like, no taillights found initially. The DNA was planted, right? Hair samples were planted. Everything was planted and then either like everything sold to just make so there's no evidence of the cover-up.
Well, and it just seems really advantageous too that, oh, look what we found, right?
1,000%.
Even though we've had, 40 officers walk this scene, now we found it. Like, and again, these are officers
looking for nudes. They were looking for nudes.
Yeah,
That's why they missed
busy looking for the.
They were looking for nudes.
Looking for the stuff on her phone.
That's like, oh, no wonder I missed it. That's reasonable.
Yeah, well,
no wonder they missed the taillights.
They're just looking for other things. Or a different set of taillights or headlights.
Karen Reed's cooked now because we just shot the defense.
The whole defense's theory.
They missed everything because they were looking for nudes. Duh.
They were looking for headlights.
It was there the whole time. Isn't that crazy though?
It does feel planted, and that goes back to like and I don't mean to always bring up the O.J. Simpson trial. That's one that people are pretty familiar with. When you found out that the main investigative officer was fairly racist. And he's the one that found all the crucial pieces of evidence, like the glove that didn't fit. It definitely helps seed doubt, I think. And in this same sense, when it's like, wait, I'm a great officer. Yeah, I do investigations, and yet I don't see these things that reflect with any type of light.
No one. They never searched the home. They never even went in. They didn't do anything. That's why it screams cover up. And how. The more and more people aren't talking beyond a reasonable doubt. Everything that the defense is presenting creates a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Not just like beyond it is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. And
that's why, when you're talking about the prosecution retrying this case, how did they not think that their burden was so like difficult how they would actually prevail a second time?
Yeah. Well, and especially if the majority were already looking to acquit. Now, it is hard, and we've talked about this too. I do feel like the theory of this case where they blame it on the police officers is such an interesting take, only because people, I think, generally tend to trust police officers more as a witness.
Not in Boston.
Yeah, I guess.
I look.
Yeah.
No offense to the Boston Police Department. There's plenty of movies that make Boston
That's
police
true.
Make the Boston Police Department look kind of corrupt. You can thank Ben Affleck for that.
Well, but again, going back to this kind of like, we tend to think, I think, and again, I could be totally off on this, but like, you tend to believe like, and we run into this in medical malpractice cases, right? Like, not our doctors. Other doctors commit malpractice all over the country, but not ours. Same with officers.
Insurance adjusters wouldn't hide evidence or not, or try to like delay and delay and cause plaintiffs to crash out
But
and
that's-
take lowball offers.
Yeah, but that's almost that officer. Like, not only was it like a okay investigation, it was a great investigation. Right? Like,
Yeah,
overdo
and
it.
that shoegate. Like, you hear about the shoe where they found a shoe at the scene, but it was like, oh, this is the left shoe. Oh, wait, it's a right shoe.
Yeah, he hit him so hard
Oh.
it knocked his shoe off, but it was
Right.
his left shoe.
So I will say this, because the defense's expert, I don't think did themselves any favor with that guy, because I was watching his testimony, and he kind of said, like, there's no way that this car could strike his head that way. Like, he'd have to be like kind of like hovering. And immediately my thought, I mean, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, wait, there's no way. What if he just bent over? And of course, that's what the prosecution's expert was trying to suggest.
Then argued
That he could have been like, I mean, if you're at the bar and then you're drinking again, he leaves with a cocktail, it seems reasonable he could have been bending over throwing up.
Yeah.
Right?
Or even
He was had a
he
little
goes
too
running
much.
out of the house. No, wait, I'm going to come with you. Slips. I mean, it is snow everywhere.
Or he had kind of,
As he's falling
Yeah.
and she's backing up. Like I said, I still want to leave over the possibility that it still
It was
could have
an
been her,
accident.
but as an accident, not as a.
I mean, it's possible. It just, all of those things, though, don't.
They don't.
They don't
You can't
explain
argue,
the arm
you
and
can't argue that
injuries.
with the lights found at the other scene and if they're planted and all of those
and
things.
no warrants, and then all the getting rid of the cell phones, selling the house, selling the dog, and all the injuries of the bites on his arm.
Yeah.
What I think, he went in because his last lock was 12:39. We don't really know time of death. We have a
Yeah.
window, so I think he went in. There might have been more drinking, which I think that's obvious. I think that's everyone's. I don't think there's a dispute to that. There might have been a scuffle, right? And it could have even been friendly, but it
Like,
doesn't
this
make
is a-
sense why they covered it up. But anyways, let's say
but you cover it up only because you don't think straight in that moment.
you don't think,
right?
and they're drinking, so they're impaired, so they're not thinking straight. So, whether it's
someone
friendly
dies
or not,
and it's like, wait, we're a bunch of officers. We can't have just killed our coworker.
I think what happened is either it's friendly or not friendly. It was maybe a scuffle, and the dog somehow got a little aggressive and went after his arm because there was a scuffle maybe between he and Albert or he and somebody in the home.
Yeah.
The dog got a little crazy because that happens too, right? Where people are like, oh, I've never seen Fido do that before. So, and if he was protecting the owner of the home or someone,
Yeah.
a family member of the home, the dog jumps in, grabs him, he falls back, hits his head.
And that would explain the blunt force trauma to the head too.
Which happens all the time.
Yeah.
People fall. I mean, you just hear about John Elway's friend and agent.
Yeah, that's super sad.
He fell out of the golf cart driving back, I think, in the Madison Club in Palm Springs or Palm Desert.
Yeah.
They're just cruising on a golf cart, so not going very fast. Yes, I think he was sitting on the back of the golf cart. He falls out, hits his head, dies. 62 years old.
I mean, and especially with the temperatures, right? Because even if it knocked him out, and then he froze to death.
So that's another civil case that we'll see what happens with the family there with the John Elway case. But
Yeah.
I know the police were looking into potentially filing criminal charges, but I don't think they did because I think it was just an accident. But whether they were impaired and drinking and whether
After the Alec
John
Baldwin
was-
case, though, these officers, they could still charge John Elway 6 months from now.
well, they still could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an accident. He fell out, but it's just a horrible thing. But that highlights, though, that you can have an accidental fall or be pulled back by a dog or something because either they're roughhousing or whether it's getting aggressive or not.
Yeah.
Falls back, hits his head. That explains the lacerations on his arm. Hits his head, blunt force trauma, and dies. And they're like, "What are we gonna do?"
Yeah.
And they put him outside
Now,
because then Jennifer McCabe.
go ahead.
This is like a big part of the defense of of Karen Reed. Haas long die, right? Because hypothermia. She meant to say how long, but I think she typed Haas long, H-A-S,
Yeah.
to die hypothermia or to die in the cold.
Now, didn't the prosecution try to bring in an expert to say, no, this was searched after the fact, not before?
Yeah, but then all the timestamps were screwed up. And then I think their forensic expert, I don't know if Burgess, because I think Burgess has been on the stand either today or yesterday, but Burgess is their forensic expert who is like apparently been trying to get a bachelor's degree for 17 years. How did they hire this guy?
Well, this goes back to like sometimes with our accident reconstructionists, you want just officers who investigated lots of scenes, but they don't have to be a doctor like our medical experts. And so I wonder if that's just.
But then he testified. This same expert testifies he's worked with insurance companies, and he works for insurance companies, meaning like he is their expert. So if you're an insurance company who's ever used this guy,
they're all putting him on their blacklist.
Yeah, it's like, oh shoot. And I wonder if there's even some cases that might go to try to reopen because of this, like this guy being a fraud. Because apparently he says he has a bachelor's degree from somewhere in the University of Alabama. He's never obtained that degree. He's been doing it for the last 17 years. But on his LinkedIn page and all his other
come on, Tyler.
CVs, he has one.
Lots of people go to school for 17 years.
That's true. I know some.
They're called doctors.
That's who I was referring to.
Tommy Boy reference, sorry.
But that's, to me, like how the prosecution and the state who's got this massive budget, and if I'm a taxpayer in Massachusetts, I'm not very happy right now.
Yeah.
Because you're trying this case, I think, in public, and it looks like a complete disaster. And why are we spending taxpayer money on this case?
Because they're embarrassed.
Well, because I think they have to. Well, one, they're embarrassed, and they're not
trying
wrong.
to save face.
Or it's a massive cover-up.
Yeah.
And I wonder, if there's any. I'm not saying Auntie Bev, this judge, is in on it, but it doesn't look good for her either. And the fact that she is appointed and not elected means she can do what she wants, and it may mean this kind of. Did you ever see the show The Judge?
Yes.
It was with
Robert Downey Jr. and
no,
not that one. Oh, there's one called The Judge with.
I might be thinking of the wrong name. It's recently with. Oh shoot, what's the guy in Breaking Bad? The actor.
Bryan Cranston.
Yep. He's from Breaking Bad, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Bryan Cranston's a judge in that show, and his son hits like a mob boss's son.
Your Honor is what
Your Honor.
That's what it's called.
Okay,
not the judge.
Called Your Honor. Your Honor. It's actually a pretty good show. If you haven't seen it, check it out, you guys. Your Honor with Bryan Cranston. So he hits the judge Bryan Cranston in Your Honor.
Yeah.
His son hits a mob boss's son and kills him. Okay.
Yep.
And then he kind of covers it up by hiring somebody to make it look like there was a hit and run, got rid of the car, but then got it impounded, so there was evidence of a hit and run. But it went deeper. Like he kind of incorporated the help of a police officer, and then the city mayor.
Well, and he was kind of known as actually being like a for the people judge.
Yeah. So no one could believe, or no one would believe, that he was in on this cover up.
Because again, he was for the defendant. He's for the people, protecting their rights, and then.
So I'm not saying this is a Your Honor situation, but it feels like it.
Now tell me this, Tyler. Do you think that this judge, when they get kind of the fame, and because it is, it's everywhere. Do you think that plays into
some of her antics?
Yeah, just now I know everything is going to be scrutinized, and almost being nervous is making her worse.
Yeah, a little bit, because a lot of the things that she's done so far makes zero sense, and that's where we talk about with the suits and all these things. That's not real. So many things of what she's doing, they don't seem real, and I think that's why Action Jackson, that's what everyone's calling him now, the defense lawyer Alan Jackson, has been so brilliant, and Alessi, because they're just they're not buying into it.
Yeah.
And notwithstanding all the number of strikes against them that she keeps yielding.
I was gonna say everything I see really feels like she's very pro prosecution.
Yeah, because she's sustaining all these objections that
me and you are looking at, and even in the civil court, which is less burden, would have been objected to, and I feel like she just keeps siding with them.
And I would be overruled. She's sustained, and I'm oh, okay.
Okay,
wow. Well, and it feels very prosecution favored for sure. Yeah. And I keep going back to that show Your Honor, wait a second.
Is she in on it? Is there a little side deal going?
This feels awkward. And it feels awkward because of the overwhelming evidence. It just seems it's a cover up.
Well, and that's where me and you benefit to some degree on our jury trials, is normally neither side has any relation to the judge. We don't see them in court that often. In fact, our last trial had a judge from a different area that was a senior judge. just because they couldn't fit in with calendars. In these criminal cases, a lot of times they've seen a lot of, especially the prosecution team.
You're in with them daily.
And maybe they've seen some of the defense to some degree, but I think you end up with more of a disdain where I just think they end up over time being a lot more pro-prosecution than maybe, and maybe their background wasn't even on prosecution side. But
well, they might have even been former prosecutors.
But I just think they tend to start to give every benefit of the doubt. If it's a 50-50 judgment call, it leans prosecution, and you get enough of them and you start to see, and I think social media's figured this out. Now it starts to feel like it really lends to they're all in on it.
I feel like, and to wrap this up, because there's so much we could talk about, but I'm curious what our listeners and viewers are thinking is the evidence, like the smoking gun for the defense. Like, is it the taillights that weren't found later? Is it the selling of all the different, like, the house, getting rid of the house and the dog and selling everything off? Is it like the planting of the hair and the DNA on the taillight?
The shoes, the wrong
shoe. Like, what is it to you? To me, I think it's the getting rid of everything and the taillights, like, not being on scene, and then not doing any sort of, like, subpoenas or warrants or any sort of investigative work on anybody there at the party that night, and only looking at Karen Reed. That, to me, that just seems so overwhelmingly biased and, like, smells like cover-up.
Well, and you would have wanted to even see, even with some of that, like, photographs of everyone's knuckles. Like, I mean, again, there's just a lot of, like, was there an altercation? And it doesn't seem like any of that was investigated.
No, I think to me, I think it's a cover-up. I think she's going to be acquitted. I think it's such a ridiculous use of, like, judicial power, and that's what struggle that we have every day, because big insurance, right? Big money, they dictate what our clients get on the daily basis, because so many clients don't have the money or the resources or the, like, bandwidth to fight it. And so oftentimes, even though we want to take more cases to trial, a lot of our clients just don't want to deal with that. And so finally they get to a point where, and we're still maximizing value, but they're just done. Yeah. And I feel like this is like just an abuse of power by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, just to, like, cover this up or whatever they're doing and find the scapegoat, which apparently is Karen Reed. I think she's going to be acquitted of that. It's just to everybody watching, like, this is what we deal with every day. The abuse of the power. And I just saw it wasn't a podcast, it was a Instagram meme of Bob Simon, good trial lawyer out of Southern California. He has a good Instagram and good podcast himself, awesome content. But he made a good point, and I've been seeing this recently. Insurance companies are now threatening deportation of clients. Like, these defense lawyers are suggesting they're going to have ICE show up and deport clients. Like, that's crazy, and it's just an abuse of power. And so that's what we do.
That's crazy.
That's what we do. Fight the power, and stand up for people.
For all you listening, Tyler's got his fist in the... No, just kidding.
I mean, it's just like, it's so annoying. Like, every day we have to deal with that. And
it's not just in big cases in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I mean, you had a judge on... Now, this case settled, but you had a judge tell you, like, before even hearing your argument, Tyler, no, that's rejected, and I'm not even going to entertain it. And you're like, well, I haven't even briefed it, Your Honor. And he threw back at you. And again, I'm paraphrasing the story, but he basically made a reference to another state. Oh, you can thank the attorneys down in Las Vegas.
Yeah, asking for, and it was like a legal process that's very normal and actually very quite fair for the civil justice system.
But without even considering, I mean, it's just a snap decision of...
Exact words. Immediately no.
Immediately no.
Immediately no.
So we deal with it, I mean, everywhere. You're dealing with a justice system that's...
And I'm not saying our judges are corrupt. I feel like Auntie Bev may be, but that's what we're dealing with. We're fighting against the power. We're fighting against the system. We're fighting against the insurance companies that are doing everything they can to, like, make you settle for less. And that's why we're here. We're doing everything we can to win for you, period. That's what we do. So, anyways, please comment, you guys. Please tell us what you think. I'm curious about what you think is really the smoking gun for the defense. I want to know. I'm curious where this trial is going to go, so we'll update it as we go along. I think she's going to be acquitted. I don't think there's any question about that whatsoever. So we'll see. I'm excited to see the end result. So until next time, you guys, I'm Tyler Todd, your host, with Jaron the Snow Canyon Man Sandberg, my co-host. Until next time, you guys, peace out.